Hello, and thanks for viewing this informational video on the US 93 Missoula to Florence corridor feasibility study. The planning team has been busy behind the scenes, and we wanted to share an update on the ongoing study effort. In this video, we'll provide an overview of the study area and an update on where we are in the study process. Next, we'll summarize key issues and discuss the improvement concepts identified to address those issues. Lastly, we'll discuss upcoming outreach events and how you can stay involved in the study. The study is focused on the portion of US Highway 93 that starts south of Missoula at the Buckhouse Bridge and ends just north of Florence. Other recent and ongoing efforts include a mill and fill highway improvement project between Lolo and Missoula, as well as a recently completed speed study from Hamilton to Missoula. These are separate efforts, but overlap with the corridor study area. We're following a multi-step process to complete the study. Step one was to gather data in the corridor and analyze traffic, safety, and other corridor conditions. Next, we identified key issues using the data we gathered and input from stakeholders and the public. We began our first outreach for the study in late 2022. Our third step was identifying general strategies that might address key issues, and we shared these big picture ideas with the public in late 2023. Most recently, we completed an initial evaluation of improvement concepts and narrowed down the types of improvements that will best meet the needs in different parts of the corridor. We'll share updates from this effort in June 2024. Looking ahead, our final step in the study process will be to complete the feasibility analysis and make recommendations for specific improvements. We're planning to host final outreach events in the fall of 2024. The study is addressing several safety and traffic operational concerns in the corridor. We know it can be very difficult to turn onto US 93 from side streets, especially during peak travel periods, at nighttime, or during inclement weather. Finding a gap in traffic and judging the distance from an oncoming vehicle can be challenging. We've also heard that turning off of US 93 onto side streets is difficult given the high speeds of following vehicles. We've identified a pattern of fixed object crashes where vehicles have left the travel lane and collided with an object, such as the concrete barrier rail in the S-curve portion of the corridor south of Missoula. We've also identified a pattern of rear-end crashes in developed areas, including south of Missoula and near Lolo and Florence. This type of crash is typical of congested conditions at high-volume intersections. There have also been head-on and sideswipe crashes where vehicles traveling in opposite directions have collided. Traveling at speeds above the posted speed limit or higher than road or weather conditions warrant has been identified as a trend in several crashes. Wild animal conflicts are also common throughout the corridor, with numerous collisions involving deer as well as other large animals such as elk, bear, and mountain lion. Snowy, icy, and wet conditions make the highway surfacing slippery and have contributed to multiple crashes. Dark conditions have also contributed to poor visibility in some crashes. We've heard multiple comments about near misses between vehicles turning onto or from the highway and pedestrians and bicyclists using the adjacent shared use path. And lastly, we've identified congested travel conditions during morning and evening commutes. All of these issues contribute to safety and operational conditions the study is focused on addressing. The study corridor includes a mix of rural and urban areas, each with their own character. We divided the corridor into 5 segments to better address the key issues in each location. Segment A is located at the northern end of the corridor just south of Missoula. This segment is characterized by high travel speeds with an urban to rural transition zone. Next, segment B includes the rural S-curves north of Lolo, where limited lighting and adverse weather and road conditions have contributed to a trend of fixed object crashes with the median concrete barrier rail. Segment C encompasses the Lolo area, with high travel speeds and poor visibility common when entering the suburban context from the north. Segment D is the longest stretch of rural highway within the corridor, where turning and wildlife conflicts are common. And finally, segment E includes the area just north of Florence, with high speeds entering from the north, causing conflicts near suburban areas. Based on the key issues in the corridor, the study team identified primary and secondary goals for corridor improvements. First, and most importantly, the primary goal in this corridor is human safety, specifically minimizing fatalities and serious injuries. To do that, corridor improvements should reduce conflicts between all users, including turning, crossing, and mainline conflicts, minimize conflicts with wild animals and conflicts with fixed objects, and encourage context appropriate speeds. Secondly, the study also seeks to support efficient traffic operations and mobility. We know it's important to reach your intended destination in a reasonable amount of time and have accesses to businesses and residences along the corridor. Additionally, improvements need to be financially feasible, and we need to minimize impacts and constructability challenges. The team has developed a series of improvement concepts to achieve these goals. We know there's a desire for improvements within the corridor sooner rather than later. To address that need, we've identified a variety of smaller scale treatments that could be installed at spot locations within the study corridor at a lower cost compared to full corridor reconstruction. These could be temporary improvements until funding is identified for long term projects, or they could be complementary improvements to the preferred long term concepts. We've listed a variety of treatments on this slide that could be implemented in spot locations. For example, improvements to a single intersection could include adjusting the timing of an existing traffic signal, installing a new traffic signal, or using a different type of intersection control, such as a roundabout. Intelligent transportation systems can include variable message signs that change dynamically to warn drivers about weather, roadway incidents, or wildlife. Shared use path improvements could be constructed at specific intersections to provide added distance from the highway. Wildlife accommodations might include improving passage at an existing culvert or bridge or installing a new feature. Access modifications could include consolidating driveways or approaches in a concentrated location. Intersection conflict reduction could involve improvements to a single intersection, and treatments could look at a barrier or a grassy median in one stretch of the corridor. Spot improvements are standalone improvements and will automatically advance to study recommendations. However, we recognize that addressing an issue in an isolated spot location is not sufficient to fully meet the corridor's needs. So we've identified a series of longer term corridor reconstruction concepts with an initial evaluation to determine what makes the most sense in each corridor segment. Concept one is a suburban design that encourages slower speeds in more developed areas. This concept includes a slower design speed and features such as raised center medians, roadway lighting, curb, gutter, sidewalk, landscaping, and speed feedback signs. Through an initial screening process, it was determined that this concept could be most appropriate in the urban to rural transition segment south of Missoula, in Lolo, and in Florence. Concept two would provide a managed access design. Existing design speeds would be maintained. Major intersections would still provide full movement from all sides and would be controlled by traffic signals or roundabouts. However, minor access points would be consolidated where possible. The highway would be divided between intersections with raised median features to limit movement at some minor access points. U-turns would only be allowed for emergency access. This concept was determined to be appropriate throughout the corridor in all segments. Concept three would be a reduced conflict design. Similar to concept two, the existing design speeds would be maintained. However, full movement access would only be provided at designated locations for this concept. In those spots, reduced conflict intersection designs would be provided. These can be different configurations, such as what's called a continuous green T, a restricted crossing U-turn or an R-cut, or the more familiar roundabout. While each of these is slightly different, all of these intersection configurations minimize conflicts between vehicles and improve safety by restricting or redirecting left turn movements compared to a standard four-legged traffic signal or stop-controlled intersection. Additionally, the design would include a divided highway with either raised or grassy medians or some type of median barrier. And lastly, U-turn opportunities would be provided at designated locations throughout the corridor. It was determined this concept would be most appropriate for the S-curves and rural highway segments of the corridor. The last concept considered would involve increasing the highway capacity by adding a travel lane in each direction. This would be a full access control facility similar to Concept 3. Reduced conflict intersection designs would be spaced throughout the corridor to enable access and turning movements. Although this option could improve traffic operations and accommodate additional growth, it was eliminated from further consideration at this stage due to high costs, excessive impacts to adjacent development and environmental resources, and poor construction feasibility in terms of terrain and the adjacent railroad, especially through the S curves portion of the corridor. This concept will not be advanced further in the study. In summary, the standalone spot improvements will be considered in all segments of the corridor. Suburban design will be considered south of Missoula, in Lolo, and north of Florence in the urban transition areas. Managed access design will be considered throughout the corridor. Reduced conflict design will be considered in the rural areas of the corridor through the S curves between Missoula and Lolo, and in the rural stretch between Lolo and Florence. And finally, increased capacity will not be forwarded as a recommended solution for the corridor due to lack of feasibility. In the final step of the study process, standalone spot improvements and the three forwarded concepts will be developed further to define the footprint, anticipated impacts, and estimated costs associated with each. The final product from the study will be recommendations for specific improvements in certain locations to provide a long-term vision and strategy to meet the corridor's needs. We hope this video has been helpful to learn about the ongoing work on this study. We also invite you to join us at an in-person open house meeting on Tuesday, June 25th, 2024 in the Lolo School Common Room. You're welcome to join from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. We'll provide the same informal drop-in format. No presentation will be provided. At the meeting, stations will be set up with additional exhibits and staff ready to discuss your concerns and ideas in each segment. If you can't attend on the 25th, we invite you to submit comments to Becca at Big Sky Public Relations or visit the study website. Looking ahead to the final step in the study, we'll be back again in the fall of 2024 to share final study recommendations. Thanks again, and we hope to hear from you soon.